Mike, come on up. Yeah. Thanks, Eldon, leading that off. I think they deserve a really good applause. So this is Mike Jackofsky. I've known him for a hell of a long time, really long time.
We're both getting old.
This is a real treat to have Mike do a demo for the club. Many of you have probably seen some of the work in our collection that we have in the conference room. If not, I'd be glad to let you in if you want to see it. But Mike, he does hollow turning like really nobody that we've met. There's a lot of guys that do a great job of impersonating Mike's turning. It's hard to impersonate his personality because he's different.
I'm waiting to hear how he's gonna say there, right? Thank you, Bob.
We love Mike. We love having him here. He's going to do a great demo. Any heckling, you get one heckle tonight. That's all. That's yours. But anyway, I'm married. I get made fun of all the time. That's okay. But thank you, Mike, for being here. And guys, enjoy the demo. You'll do a great job. If you have any questions, I assume they can ask you as you're going.
Yeah, I can talk and turn at the same time. It's okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
True.
Yeah. Anyway, so glad Mike's here.
Thanks.
And good luck.
Hey, good luck. Yeah. You already said it's going to be a good demo. It's kind of putting a lot of pressure on me there. I don't know. All right, guys. Across the street here from where I'm doing the class. I'm doing the class in March next year, so everybody's really interested. What's up? Huh? What do you mean? Am I not right? Right. So basically, some things that are specific to just our forms that they do. Some things that we can use salad bowls or anything else. What is the first thing that I'm going to show you? Some of you guys have seen me do this so many times, but I'm probably the only one that started doing this, but I just assumed everybody did this when I started. I didn't know I made it up. But basically, whatever size screwdriver I'm going to do, I'm 8-inch deep, which is seated. And I've never had my class get hurt. This is because of what I do, because this kind of locks it in. So I'm using I use 2-pound spurs. Some people make a big I tip things around. So I use it too when I can get it. This isn't big anymore. It's a 5/8-inch 2-pound. When I start a hollow form, I'm just going to go ahead and drill it quick. You need glasses originally. I'm getting old. My eyesight's going. All right. This is a really piece of box elderberry with a little conclusion. We'll have to see what happens with that. But basically, this is something that I insist my students do. And if you pick up one thing from me tonight, it could be this. This isn't going to go anywhere now. That's not going anywhere from that. It's seated. I cringe when I see people just put things between centers. Sometimes even demonstrators will take a piece with bark and just push it up against the load. It's like hoping that it doesn't fall off. It's really what you're doing. So the only thing I have to do, and when you're the student in my class, you know, is pay attention to the tailstock end. By the way, this is never tight in my shop. Mine's off. Because if you got this locked, you think you're locked in on this and you're not. Okay, so I do not use that. That's for spindle turning, really. So I'm going to lock this down and then bring that over. Many times I'll end up to either take advantage of something or not, but I always start out between centers. You notice I cut things round. I cut cubes. And when I travel, there's a reason when someone's cutting me for the class, I want them to cut a cube, because then I can decide what the top is going to be. And if I don't do that, I'm going to get all kinds of odd things. So I always start with the cube, but also all shapes are kind of contained in the cube. So no decisions have been made right now. And a lot of people will do a lot of shaping with the saw where you've already started the shaping process. So there's two things that I've ended up teaching in this world. There's the technical part of getting the wood out and that part of it. And then I have one foot in the art world too. I've never really considered myself an artist, but there's a certain amount of art in the shape. There's no art in going through a, there's no art in hollowing it out. That's just work and practice. I can teach almost anybody that. But the shape, it's like photography. Some people are going to get it and some people are not. And some people are a little annoyed with me that I'll never hold anything up and say, make this. Because I think that's kind of arrogant. I don't think, I've made probably, I've been saying 5,000 for 10 years. I have no idea how many I've made. You know, because if you count all the little ones, I've numbered bigger pieces. I'm guessing 7, 8,000. I've never got anything that I think is perfect, and I never will. That's my attitude. You shoot for perfection, but I realize I'm never going to do it. And I'm never going to hold something up to my students and say, make this. So we're just going to see. I kind of have an idea where I'm going to get. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure what's going to happen with that void there either. So we'll kind of play with it. So this has to be tight. This is the thing I have to pay attention to. That's why I don't turn this thing up, okay? The safety thing in my class is speed. And I don't wear a face shield because I just don't like face shields, but also because they're not, I turn big heavy blocks of wood. That face shield, those flimsy face shields, has a little bit of a false sense of security. And I've seen people just sit here and turn the speed up. Me, I'm either over here or I'm over here. I'm not going to stand in front of this, even though this is a pretty small piece of wood. But I put things on the lower that way more than I do in the old days. I'm getting old. It used to be 8 inches. Now it's 10 inches probably. You know, I really have aged a lot. But basically, the speed is the thing. So I'll turn the speed on, and this is a big than a small piece of wood. So I'm probably going to go really fast. So you guys are the ones I'm going to worry about, not me. All right, so the thing with the cubes now, this is a piece of burl. There's no uphill or downhill, but I'm used to start on side grain wood, and if there's any the tourist here, this direction, okay? I use 1 gauges and they're 30 degrees. I'm not going to talk too much about it. I use a big gauge and a small gauge for each piece. This is a medium one way because this is a pretty small piece of wood, and then I have the smaller one. So I use the big for roughing, and then I go back to it. So I'm going to turn the thing into round real quick. Hopefully. I do with the, I do not think it's a safety issue, but be careful. I talked to a long time ago about it, and I said, do you think there's anything? It's not you and Mike all the time. And he actually told me, he goes, I don't even know if it's a safety. I think we tell you that to slow you down as a beginner. If you've got something gummed up on your leg, you might push the tool rest into it. Adjustments. If I've stopped the lathe a lot for a lot of reasons, but even the tool rest a little bit is not working. So there's a few things I do. But a little bit too far over the tool rest there. I'm making that noise. So I do a little bit of shaping between centers, but not very much. Okay, so I am gonna stop and talk about tendons for a minute to get this. First of all, this thing's pretty balanced. But a lot of times this is bouncing, and for students, sometimes it's good to take a little cut so that you're not hitting a moving target. It doesn't matter that much to me, but usually the students make 1 or 2 cuts so that that's a flat surface. This thing is so balanced, I didn't have to do it. So I'm going to rub down the tendon. Safety glasses. Well, you know, I've had a few health issues in my life, and I'm up to 3 glasses, and I hate it. I mean, I used to have such good vision, but I just can't believe this. But the 2.5. The thing about a face shield too is it's 2 layers of things that get dust on it, so it kind of bothers me. But these are really strong protection for my face. But if you get hit with, believe me, if you get hit with a 60-pound block of wood in the face, those little face shields aren't going to make any difference at all. Imagine getting hit with a baseball bat in the face. So I don't mind people wearing them, but I don't like people that rely on them and they'll turn the speed up and sit there like this. And I'm going, no, don't do that. Just watch where I'm standing. If this thing goes, I'm going to hit one of these guys and not me. But there's nothing special about this. So some of you guys have seen me do this a lot. I want to come over to the board now. I promised I'd warn you camera guys about that. All right, so let me get some. I'm using I'm going to be using these Vic Mark shark jaws. These are my favorite jaws, okay? And I've got a little difference of opinion with a lot of people. A lot of us were taught you want the jaws all the way closed because it's a circle. Technically, they're not a circle when they're all the way closed because there was a saw curve that cut them. So if you're an engineer and you want to figure out a perfect circle, you'd have to know what the saw blade was and open it that exact amount. I'm not doing anything like that. Okay. If I was turning a piece of ebony, I would agree with that. But on all the wood I turn, those 8 points are digging really deep into that wood. And I think it's a better hold. So I like the jaws open. It's completely opposite of what anyone else has ever told you. But I crank it down so much that at the end of this, there'll be 8 notches that'll be about 1/8 of an inch deep, and it's going to hold really well. One thing is I get a better shape using these because if the piece is right up against the jaws of the chuck, right up against the base of the chuck, you can't see it as well. So these jaws are going to bring it away from it about 1.5 inches, and I can see it better. So I don't tell people what shape to make, but I'm just explaining that I think you make a better shape if you get yourself a little room like that. So I've got the chuck here. Let me grab that parting tool is what I meant. So what I did is I roughed out the chuck. I'll tell my students to measure it, but I don't really care because I use these all the time. So what I have, if you make a tenon like this, these are dovetailed, and you might think you got it right. If you do that, the jaws are going to seat like this. And that space right there will knock that thing right out. Because you have to have something to seat it. If all you did is match the dovetails and you had that round part there, as soon as you get any little catch, it's going to go flying. I only found this. If you guys could find me a darker color, I don't know. I couldn't find another one in that box. I don't see another one. I'm not going to draw right now anyway, but the secret to making the good chuck is to not only have the dovetail, but to have the flat spot right there. Can you see it at all? Is it? Okay. Well, I'll go over it a little bit if you want, make it a little darker. I looked around, that's all I saw was the green. But if you make that flat spot, then the jaws seat like this and there's no space there. And you can get away with a tenon that's only okay if you're making a salad bowl or something because you can see what you're doing. In a hollow form, you're much more likely to make a mistake. So you really, really need to learn how to make a good solid tenon. The other mistake I see all the time on Instagram, I'm on Instagram now, I can't believe it, is that people make too small of a tenon. You know, you don't want to make an 8-inch hollow form out of a 2-inch tenon. A 3-inch is probably 2 or 3 times stronger. So most of the time people need to have a little bit bigger jaws, but these jaws will open up about 3.5 inches. And I told you those 8 little corners will really hold in there really well. But so these are dovetails. So what I ended up doing is it's flat right now here. And what I'm going to do is take my little parting tool and get that dovetail. But one of the keys is I take that little corner out. I come back about just 1 millimeter more because then I don't have to worry about cutting that angle cleanly when the jaws close. So it's really easy to do. I use a pen parting tool for this. So right now I don't have any angle on there at all, but you got to make sure this is flat. This flat spot here, but this is how long it takes me to make that dovetail angle. You ready for me there? All right. I told them I make video people's lives miserable because I don't pay any attention to them at all. That's how I've learned how to not be shy in front of crowds, is just pretend they're not there. Right? So anyway, I'm going to take my little parting tool and come in. Not if you can, how you can see this, but I'm going to come in. I don't use a big parting tool because it'll take off too much of the corner. It just looks like this. That's it. Is that better? No, that's not good either, is it? I don't know, guys. What do you want? Someone else want to do it? All right, I'll do it again. Look, you come in and you take that little corner out. That's it. That's how long it takes me to set the tenon up. Okay. So I'm going to do a little bit of shaping between centers. Nothing I'm doing now is final because everything's going to get recut as soon as it's in the chuck. So I'm just going to give it a little bit more shaping. I use push cuts, pull cuts, both. When someone tells me they only do push cuts or only do pull cuts, to me, that's like driving a car and only making right turns. You can get where you're going, but you learn how to go in both directions. I use a lot of both cuts. Nah, I don't have no idea where the bottom's going to be right now. You know, you're out of heckles. Daryl warned you that you only got one, so. Oh, I don't know. You have to let these guys decide. Okay. I don't like those swing away things. I can still pick that thing up because they go here, and a lot of times that's where I'm standing. So anyway, I'm going to move this thing down, I guess. Let's see. I have a 24-16 one-way. Most people have never seen that. They're used to the big one. So I'm used to working on a really short bed lathe. I hate these old buttons to lock this thing. Okay. Okay, if you have one of these Vic Mark chucks, these shark jaws are a great thing to own. They really are. I used to go into clubs and really mess with people's heads. I do a spindle turning demo without the tailstock. Figure that one out. I take an 8-inch piece of maple and put it in here square and hold it with 2 inches. And I take my bowl gouge, not a spindle gouge, rough it up, make a top, make another top, flip it around, make another top. So I've done 3 tops and I don't own any spindle turning tools. All right, so. The other thing is I have a Vic Mark chuck that's so old, it's lefty tighty. I don't know if some of you have been around long enough. He started making them the way the rest of the world is like 20 years ago, but mine's older than that. So often I'm turning it in the wrong direction because this one's actually normal. All right. The very first thing I have my students do now is take out any wobble and turn that speed down. Again, I can go really fast because this is a big lathe, big jaws. This is such a small piece of wood, but I'm going to stand over here and increase the speed gradually. So that's pretty good. It isn't really moving, but it's moving a little. And a lot of times people get in there and they don't fix that. And now that's going to transfer in when I'm doing the hollowing. So all I really want to do is take light little cut and just take away anything that's bouncing. All right. No shaping really there. All I'm doing is trying to get rid of anything that's going to bounce around. Okay. So I haven't made any decisions yet. Like you're asking me about the bottom. I have no idea. Hopefully the bottom's going to be on this side of the bottom of the piece of wood. That's kind of actually it. So I really like having this small. I use one-way gouges. I really like them. They're double fluted. All the tools I use, my hollowing tools and my big gouges, right in these Hosselick or one-way handles. They're half on one end, 5/8. This is my exception. This is the only tool I want a short handle for because this little gouge, I kind of maneuver it. I'm not holding it with my whole body. So this is a 3/8. For those of you that know, if this was English, it'd be quarter. They measure it differently. They measure the flute. And here in Canada, they measure the whole width of the material. So this is a 3/8 one way, but if it was English, it would be a quarter. And it's a great little gouge. It's a 40-degree angle, and it really cuts well. I'm a hand grinder. My grinds are never really perfect. I don't like the CBN wheels. They have no spark. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it with me. I'm not looking to change anything. But I use the Norton 3X 80 grit wheels, and I can just go like that, and I see the spark. I said I've learned in the day and age of video not to touch the grinder during a hollow form demo, or else I have to stop and talk about grinding for 10 minutes, and I don't want to do it. Okay, so this is the first cut that I actually care about. I'm going to make a clean cut. Somewhere in this thing is going to be my rim, and I don't really know where yet. I don't want to be up this high, so I'm coming down a little. So now I'm going to try to cut this clean now. And remember, this is a piece of burl, so there's no uphill, downhill. You can kind of cut whatever direction you can. So somewhere in that little space there is going to be my rim, and I want that to be clean. And this burl's didn't cut all that clean. It's completely dry. Okay. So there it is. Now I'm going to make my first decision. How big an opening do I want to go through? If you guys were here last year, in the middle of it, I declared it to be the dumbest demo I've ever done in my life. I went through about a 3/8 opening. And I'm going, I never do that in front of people. What I tell new people is don't challenge yourself in front of a group. They stay in your comfort zone. So I'm going to make this one bigger. I'm not going to do that again. It was a whole bunch of chatter. So I'm going to come in like this. And I'm going to open it up a little bit, enough that I know I can do it easily and quickly. And while I'm here, I'm also going to cut a V. That's to guide my drill in. Okay, so what I have now, I'm going to go just one more notch bigger. Okay, so what I have now is I've got an opening and I have a nice clean inside. That is a wall thickness on the inside. Whatever I leave here, that's my commitment for the wall thickness through the whole piece. So now I'm going to take that down. So this is going to be my second decision is how thick of a wall do I want to go through? When I started, I used to have 1/4 of an inch in mind. Then I went to 3/16. Now in my head, I'm thinking 1/8. But you know, honestly, it's probably a little thinner than that by the time I clean it up. But I'll tease engineers in the room. You want to know what the thinnest bowl I've ever made? I have no idea. You know, can you turn this many thousandths? I don't know. I have no idea. How about the size of the openings? I don't know that either. But what I'm telling the students is make sure that when you look at the opening, you know that you have the tools that'll reach. That's really all I'm thinking about. So this is how I cut down that wall. I'll come in like this. And as I get closer, what I do is I'm pretty rough with the cuts until I know I'm getting close to the final surface because I like to go fast. So I'm not going to make a whole bunch of paper thin cuts. Oh, I'm really slipping around. But when I get close, I start really paying attention to letting the wood come to the tool. Now I'm going to go thinner than that. All right. So what I have now is I got an opening and a wall thickness and a matching wall thickness on the inside. And a lot of times people drill a hole right now. Until I start my shaping, I don't know where the bottom's going to be. So I have no idea how deep to drill it. That's another mistake people make. They drill early. If you drill too deep, you then have to stretch your shape out. and you won't be able to make the shape you want. So if I drill too deep right now, I've already ruined the piece. I just don't know it yet. So what I do is I don't try to figure out where the bottom's going to be. I'll drill about 1/4 of an inch shy of where I think I need to drill, and I'll deal with that later. That way I don't mess up doing that. So I got this cut relatively clean for how tough this wood is. This wood is not cutting clean at all. It's so bone dry. But that's the first inch or so of the shape. Now, this is the way I'm used to cutting, but I can't see the shape from there. So a lot of times there's no end grain up or downhill with this, but normally, even if it is, I will cut in the wrong direction often, as long as I know I'm doing that. And you can get away with it if it's a nice sharp gouge, if you're careful. And then what I'll do is come back and clean it up with the proper direction. So what I'm going to do is come here and see if I can match up that cut. So I don't know what the bottom's going to be. This is what students go through with me. I have no idea what the bottom's going to be until I get there. My theory is you got to cut something first. It's not like you got a big machine that's going to do the whole thing. So I'm not worried about what the bottom is. I think in a hollow form, your eye goes to the opening first. So that's the first thing I do. Then I'll do the next inch and the next inch. So I work my way down to get the shape. Okay, so now I'm going to just keep that curve going. This is the fun part where I actually get to, it's all balanced and I get to make a shape really quick. So I'll come in like this. Can you guys, is the light bouncing off there? Can you guys see that? If I turn the light out, I won't be able to see. I think I need to be able to see. Is that better or worse? Is that all right? I'm okay. All right. Okay. So basically, I don't turn with my hands. I turn with my body. So to get any cut, what I do is I take my weight from one leg to the other and I make curves like this. And when I'm hollowing, it's the same thing. You'll never see me do this. You know, this is worth a quick moment and stuff. Some of you guys have heard me say this. And my background, weirdly enough, is martial arts and not anything like this. I had no experience. So in the beginning, I was just muscling everything. You know, I bent tools, I broke tools, I did everything wrong, and I'm a little bit better now. But basically, where your hand strength comes from is not your thumb and your forefinger. I never grab anything like this. It hurts, and I'll never do this because that actually hurts my shoulder. A long time ago, I was up in Canada. I had my bicep get ripped off my arm. It was a pretty gruesome injury, so I usually have the worst shoulder in the room. But the way I hollow and the way I turn with my big gouge, I tuck this in. And every single thing you do in life, you're stronger with your elbows in close to your body. As soon as your elbow gets away, like in jiu-jitsu, we want to pull the elbow back because you're helpless out here. So when I see people holding the bow gouge out here like this, that's fine, I guess, because you can see it, but not in a hollowing tool. I have no strength there at all, and I'm going to break it. So when I get into the hollowing, you'll see me tuck the thing in. This is too short a handle. But this, what I'm doing is once I start to cut, I'm just moving my body like this to make the cut, to make the curve. And I got this thing cranked up pretty fast. Actually violating one of my rules. I don't like to use the small bow gouge for a push cut because you use a pull cut, you're usually further off the tool rest, and this tool doesn't like to be that. So I go back to the bigger bow gouge for that. So to make a really good clean cut, I like to actually, if I'll drop the tool rest down and come up here with it to make that pull, okay?
All right.
I put a little super glue earlier on that piece of bark. I can feel it now. So what I'm looking for with the shape is no place that your eye stops. Like if you see a flat spot and a change of direction, that bothers me. So what I'm looking for is just a flow all the way through. And I try to keep the flow, keep it nice and simple. And the nicer the piece of wood is, the less I want to mess with it. I don't want to do anything but just kind of leave it alone. I got a couple little marks there. This is so dry, it's not cutting that well for me, but it's going to sand really easy. So I know that. So basically, I'm not too worried about the little tool marks, but I'm having trouble getting out of it here. High as the lathe will go. I turned it up all the way. This wood is so dry and it's a little bit punky, a little bit, and it's got that bark inclusion. So this is not cutting clean at all. I'm struggling a little, but I'm trying to pretend I'm not. But I realize when you're having that kind of trouble that, okay, the other thing is sanding. I don't have an ego thing with my sanding. I'm not going to start with 400 grit, okay? You can do that, but if you got 120 things, use 120. And normally with the piece of burl, that's what I start with is 120. And I have I'll talk about this for a minute and stop. I have a really different way of finishing than anybody else. I finish nothing on the lathe other than a spinning top or a box. What I do is I only sand with 120 and maybe 180. And after it's off the lathe, I have 3 palm sanders set up. And I have these old, some of you might remember Porter Cable Model 330 speed block. They don't make it anymore. When I see them on eBay, I buy them. And they're kind of a cult thing. Sometimes if they're brand new, that old, they're like a lot of money. But they have a really good thick pad. They're orbital, not random orbit, but it's an orbital thing. And I'll sit right in front of my big exhaust fan and I'll sand it with 220, 320, and 400. That's what I do. And I'm not breathing that dust. But sanding on the lathe is not going to get me where I want to go. It's symmetrical scratches. Right? The first grit, you have to get to the bottom of your worst mistake. After that, you're just taking the scratches you made with the first grit. So if it was a piece of ebony, that's my example, I would not want to touch it with 120. That would put a texture on it. Then I would want to start with 320 or something. But with something like this, I'll always start with 120. If my rule is, if you think you can start with 220, start with 180. If you think you can start with 180, start with 120, because otherwise we've all done that where you put finish on something and you realize you missed something. So that's my thing is, and with the first grit, you have to get rid of anything that's a mistake there. You want to get all the way down. So I'm going to hit it real quick with the 120 I have set up. The other thing, I talk about power sanding a lot, and I realize sometimes I get students that are turning with the opposite end that I do. The lathe's coming this way, so I'm going to set it up so that this side of the drill is going the opposite direction of the lathe. And then I won't turn it, and if I turn it around, you'll see me reverse it and go to the other direction. By the way, sanders don't like it if you just reverse them at full speed. The bearings fall out. There's a lot of lessons that I've learned in doing this. Also, I tend to sand at a really high speed because I'm skipping over voids and bark inclusions. And what we teach people usually is to sand at a slower speed. I tend to sand almost the same speed as I turn because I'm usually skipping over something. And if you go really slow, you'll flatten the sand. It's another reason why I don't finish sand. If you got bark inclusions, that'll become a flat spot. I work really hard not to have any flat spots. So also, I'm not going to sand very much. We're all going to eat a little bit of dust here for a minute. One little quick story. I was at the Utah Symposium many years ago, and I explained I am going to sand a little bit, but I'm not going to wear a mask. And I gave them the warning about a mask. But I said, if I put a mask on, I'm saying you guys are going to eat that dust, and I'm not. So I'm in there with you, and that way I don't sand that much. I said, when I see a demonstrator put a respirator on, I leave, okay? So somebody comes up to me later, did you hear what happened? The guy after you put a respirator on, we all laughed. I won't tell you who it was, and I don't think he likes me very much. But really, be careful of the dust. The other thing too, I learned a lot during COVID about masks. I always told people to use the one with the exhale bag because the other ones were like this. But I really had a lot of time to learn about that. That means that the 5% that's getting through is the worst 5%. The smaller the particle is, the more it'll stay in your lungs. That's why asbestos is so bad. So there's a company called Moldex that makes N100 masks, and they're almost the same size. They're probably $7, $8 each. If you have no beard, it won't work for you or me very well. It's like a dive mask, but they work really well. They work every bit as good as anything you could ever have. They have one extra layer, but they also have a bead of silicone on them. And so that's kind of what I'm using in my shop. All right, let me just hit this quick. Also, because this thing is so dry, I'm doing a little micro adjusting on the shape too. You know, I can take a little tiny high spot now and I can kind of get rid of it. All right. I'm in there with you. I'm not going to do a lot of sanding. That was 120. This is too nice a piece of wood, though, to screw it up and leave the marks. Sometimes I'll sand in reverse. I don't have any need to do that right now, but sometimes I do. Also, watch the way I'm holding the thing. I do so many things without thinking. I'm not holding it with my hands. I'm holding it with my body. Even just doing the sanding, I'm doing that. Some of that stuff is just natural for me. So I'm just like this. So I'm working less. All right. No more sanding. That's actually was 220, so that's a little bit even more than I would normally do. I don't have the palm sanders with me. But I'll tell you something, your work will really be better if you actually sand off the lathe like that. You know, because what I can do is I can work around bark inclusions. And I'll sit there and work it in different directions. The other thing that's really important with sanding, you see where I do with it, is the compressor. Because there's times when you're sanding something, you think you did a good job and you blow it off and you realize not so much. Like redwood or buckeye, it looks like the moon. So in between each fit, I'll usually do this. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. The thing is, I'm not doing 120. I'm doing 220, 320, and 400, so I'm less likely to make facets. If I was doing 80 or 120 with the palm sander, I'd probably flatten it out pretty good. So I'm really just doing they're just finish sanders. They're not to take out any problems with it. But the thing I like about that old Porter cable, it's got about a 1/4 of an inch pad. That's the best pad I've ever seen. And some of the newer ones I've seen are nice, except the pad's like a rock. And you can't really do a round surface with it. So, and also there's a lot of aftermarket pads there. The original ones are the best. Now, some of you guys have been around me a while. I used to use a concrete bit to drill this. And I tell my story about how I started turning, and I went to Home Depot and I bought a long drill bit to do this. I didn't know it was a concrete bit. Someone had to tell me. That's how inexperienced I was. I go, what? But they're carbide tip and they're wider than the shaft. So but you have to sharpen them. And I used to use that. A regular drill bit, especially if you did go deep, will run right in. It's really easy to have it get out of control. Well, I switched over to using a gun drill just recently. And I'm finding that these aren't very aggressive either. Trent Bosch started doing that, but he runs air through it. I think that's going too far. I don't need to do the air, but they work really well. So this is a gun drill, and they're really confusing. Some of them are inches, some of them are millimeters, and some of them are caliber. And I have no idea. I'm just a 1/2 inch was too big, a 1/4 inch was too small. I think 357 caliber works about right for everything. So I'm going to come in there. Oh, this is a time you might want to slow it down. So I've cut this V. I drew it on the board. I've cut this V to guide the drill in. So right now I've got this, and I know later I'm going to come in and change the bottom. So I can't touch the bottom. I need that for stability. So I'm only really looking at the first 2/3, but I know later after I'm going to cut that back in. So I'm only going to drill here, but in my mind, I'm kind of imagining where that bottom's going to be. So I'm just going to run that drill into about there, and I'm going to stop before I think the actual bottom's going to be, because it'd be really easy to go too deep. Okay, so when I get to the bottom, I know I probably have a little bit more hollowing left to do, but better than going deep. Deep ruins it. You can't get that curve. You're trying to stretch it out, and I hate when that happens. So, and be careful about it. But that first inch is everything when you're doing this thing by hand. And once you're in there, that's easy. But if you start off at a wrong angle, the game's over. If you start in like this, you can't drill the hole. Okay, so you go in a little at a time with this and clear it. And now I'm going to actually pay attention. It's amazing with feet I worked. I've never broken one in front of a whole group like that. It's going to happen someday. You guys can say you were there. All right. Doesn't take that long to do. Now, I used to tell people maybe the safer way is to use the tailstock with a drill, you know, with a chuck. I've seen some really bad things happen where people push it in and pull it out, and that Morse taper stays in there for a split second before it goes and flies. So that if they were screwed on, I would agree with that. But because they're Morse taper, they might stay in the wood when you pull it back out. So I've decided, you saw how easy that was. I've decided that's a safer way to do it, actually. Okay, so that's done. So we get into the fun part for you guys, the fun work for me. I actually have to hollow this now. I have these little tools. We're kind of out of stock on them now at the time. They're called rocket tools. They're using carbide. My tools are called Hollow Pro. I let Craft sell them. They're the sole distributor of my tools. But this one is a 3/8 straight tool with a carbide cutter on the end of it. And these things, when I first tried them, they're so aggressive because they're actually cupped. They're almost like a little bowl gouge. So I played around until I got the angle that worked for me on there. So these are a fixed tip. My bigger tools have swivel tips. I couldn't do a swivel tip on this little one. So this is what I'm going to end up using for most of it. Straight tools are so much easier to use than bent tools. I can put a straight tool in people's hands the first day and they can do it. Bent tools are a whole different story. You know, but if you do the things I do, bent tools are a necessary evil. You have to have them or I wouldn't be able to get over here. But I'm going to start doing, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to come down the middle. Here, let me show you what I'm going to do here on this. You know what I did with that marker? Well, there it is. The first thing I'm going to do, I don't have an order. You know, some people will say 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't have that. What I'm aiming to do with a big piece is get all this middle out down to there, and I don't care really how you do it. But what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to end up on a bigger piece with about a 1/2 inch tapering like this. And then I know I still have the stability to come back and finish that. But this piece is smaller. Why I don't have formulas. I can probably go 1/4 inch on the top and still be stable enough on this little piece to make the cut. So I'm just going to, as quick as I can, I'm just going to hog out that middle like this and just see how close. Then I'm going to slow down and finish this part. Then I come back to the bottom again. Okay, and there's no formula because if you've got an 8-inch piece of solid wood, that's different than a 12, 14, 16-inch piece of Buckeye burl that has holes in it. They're all different, and you have to leave wood in the bottom or else you'll get a lot of chatter and vibration. So I can't do the whole thing. In an ideal world, if I could make a 1-inch tenon, I could do the whole thing, but we know it's just going to fly across the room. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and hollow this thing, see how quick I can do. Now I'm going to go back to going fast again. And the only reason I know the speed is I probably shouldn't say this, it's almost 3,300. She's my assistant this week and she's laughing at me. I'm not supposed to say that. I don't want to be a bad, but that's because this thing doesn't weigh anything and I can get away with it. it was a big piece, I'd probably be at 800 or 900 and clunk, clunk, clunk. But this is going to be pretty easy for me. Now, one of the things is there's no place for shavings to go right now. And that's another reason why people break things, especially wet shavings. There's no place, they're going to grab the tool. So right now, I don't have to stop the lathe. Pretty soon, I'm going to have to stop the lathe to do it. That just made a different sound, didn't it? Oh, all right. I thought it was the lathe. You know, that's a funny thing, too. I had a guy come up to me at the Utah Symposium years ago and say, can I ask you a question? Sure. I've been breaking a lot of hollow forms. Can you help me out? I said, what's the last thing you remember? Well, I started making a funny noise. What'd you do? Well, I kept turning. There you go. Now pay attention, you know, that's the biggest safety thing. You start hearing some weird, if it starts back, hit that safety button. You know, one of the things I like to have a remote is if something goes wrong, I have to reach way over here to do it. It's really good to have that remote where you can bail like this. But this thing's really flying right now. Yeah, it's chattering a little. It really isn't as loud as that. It's picking up with my microphone. I've learned that in symposiums too. It makes me sound worse. All right. I'm just going straight down. I can turn more because I'm creating some space in there for the shavings. Now, this isn't going to take me very long. I made the opening really big for me after what I did last year. I learned my lesson. But honestly, I tried demos. I try to have fun with you guys with the demo. If this wasn't fun, I'm not doing it. It becomes work. I've realized all these years, if I'm in the room, I'm the guy in the back in school hoping nobody calls on me. I don't want the microphone. I don't want the camera. I'd like to go back to the old days when it was just the people in the room with no microphone. And I hate being videoed, recorded. I'm afraid I'm going to say something stupid. Nobody's going to understand. There was context somehow, right? So I'm really careful now. I'll answer a question going, I don't know. So, all right. So I'm almost down to where I drew already. It's happening really fast. The other thing is, the biggest thing in a hollow form, here, let me turn, is finding the wall. Like right here, I can see it, but once you're in there, you can't see. So I don't just stick the tool in there. What I tend to do is roll the tool over so it's not going to cut and find that wall. That's the biggest key, because if you don't know where that wall is, all of a sudden, boom, you're going to break it. So what I do is I touch it with it like this where it won't cut, and then I roll into the cut. Okay, I kind of know where I am, but that's how I teach beginners. That's really important. So you go in there like this. I can even look at you guys. There, I found the wall. Now I roll and make the cut. Find the wall. Make the cut. See, I got to turn a little bit more there because there's more room. Now I can kind of, you'll start seeing more shavings come out. All right. I haven't measured yet. My students will tell you there's a lot of do as I say, not as I do when I'm doing a demo. Yeah, because I'm trying to go at warp speed right now, and you really should stop and measure things. So I have a caliper that I use. This is one of my hollow form calipers. So what happens is this thing will give me, can I go over here, guys, with you again? This. Okay. All right. See why I don't like video? No, I'm kidding. I'm teasing you. All right. So this is going to give me a measurement right there. You reach in there like this, and it's very accurate. Whatever this space is, that's the wall is. And I get asked a million times, I'm going to tell you, they're not calibrated, okay? They're not calibrated, number one, because I don't care. But mainly, there's a lot of reasons. I've never made tools before, and I know that if we calibrated, and I use millimeters for this, it's the only thing in the world I know millimeters for is this, because I don't want to have to remember later that I had, you know, 2 and 7/32 of an inch. I want millimeters for that. But the reason I don't calibrate this really is I only use it with this, and later when I off the lathe and I'm trying to do the bottom, I'm going to use a ruler. So I don't want to use two different measurement devices or else they might be off by a little bit. So I don't really care. It's just about that much. All right. But I will when we get later into the bottom. When I get in the bottom, this thing is going to give me a measurement later that's going to show where the bottom of the wood is. And that's the one I measure. So this is going to measure here pretty well. And it's also going to measure over here pretty well. In between here are the old-fashioned figure eights. That's the best thing because this is not giving you a good angle there. It would be like if we're over here, let me go back over here again. It's like with the figure eights, if you were measuring this bed of the lathe, that's accurate, but that's not. And there's all kinds of curves going on in there, but this will give you a really good accurate measurement there. I still got about an inch, but it won't tell you here. So this is what I'll do here. I knew I didn't really need to stop there. I just wanted to show you, but I'm pretty close to final wall thickness right there. I got about 1/8 of an inch and then it picks up, but you guys should measure a lot. If you're just learning how to do this, measure a lot. You also, Kraft doesn't know I mangled one of these today. These don't fit in anything I make, so I ground out part of it because I forgot to bring mine. I don't know if you can see it, but now I can get it into small openings. I just took down to about 1/4 of an inch there. So now I can get it in there. So I can still reach because I made the hole big. I don't need the bent tool quite yet. And I can get in there a little bit more. Okay, I think I'm pretty well caught up already to that photograph or that drawing that I did. So what I've really done is I've roughed the top half out. Okay, and I've got it now where I'm ready to come in and I'm going to do a little bit with the bent tool, but then I'm going to go for final wall thickness real quick. All right. So I got a number of bent tools. Right now, these are completely unavailable. I'm having trouble with getting them made. One of the things with a bent tool is you can't have the bent part on the tool rest. It's got to be straight. It's got to be lined up. So with a bent tool, it means you can't cut right there. You have to come back with this like this. So, but I can reach in there, but because these tools are so small and they're going to chatter, I want it to be as close as I can. So I'm just still doing a little bit of a roughing cut. So I'm going to turn it over like this and find it and then roll into the cut. Okay, that's another thing with me. I don't stop mid-cut because I don't want to have any steps in there. That's a trap. So every time I finish the cut, I roll back toward the middle so that if you look in there, it's always going to be smooth and I don't have anything to run into. I'm not looking at that, so you guys need to tell me if there's something I'm messing up on you. All right. I'm going to switch tools. I started to make this tool and it never became available. I call it a slight bent tool. The more bent the tool is, the harder it is to use. A lot of reasons. One of them, you're further off the tool rest. Just kind of common sense, right? The other thing that makes bent tools so hard to use is where you're cutting. See, in the middle of a piece, it's making little small circles, so the push is straight down, and straight tools are much easier to use. But when you're in a bent tool, you're getting rotational forces. So when you get a really big bent tool and you're way over here, the wood's going to want to rip it out of your hand. I know that. I know that really well. I've probably made more hollow forms than any living human, and I've broken more than any living human too. I didn't have anybody teaching me step by step. I just was muscling everything. Little trick I do with these little tools is I put the screws in the dead center. So when this is in there, I know where the tip is. Okay, these are the one-way handles and Hoslick handles. So the other thing is they're 1/2 inch and 5/8. I use those two bow gouge sizes, but every hollowing tool I make fits in this handle. This is 3/8, but I use the 1/2 inch size and just push it down. It doesn't matter. So when I travel, I really kind of only need a couple of handles like this. But the slight bend tool is a little bit different. The reason why I really, really like it is I can cheat and I can use the bent part on the tool rest. I don't have to be way back here. So if you can reach, this is easier. If you really set yourself up where you need a very bent tool, that's much harder to do. Okay, but this one should, we'll see. I'll break it after saying that. So I got a flashlight. The flashlight's either a really good idea or it'll drive you completely crazy. Somewhere in between. Okay, I'm finished with here. This happening really fast with this, and I still have a little bit. I'm going to go back in there once, but I like these long flashlights like this. If you have a regular flashlight, everything looks really good sometimes in there. You can't see the nub, you can't, but this one, it comes around from an edge and it gives you that shadow. So students will go, oh, I think I got it. No, actually, look, if you look from here, you got something like this in the bottom. These guys will tell you. But from right here, I can see it's pretty smooth in there. I still have some of the depth hole left, and I'm seeing there's a little ridge because I know there's a little bit more wood right there. So now I'm just going to go ahead and see if I can finish that. Also, if I leave it on that angle, it's kind of a light little shear cut, and I can do that too. All right. There's another little thing. I'm trying to throw a bunch of stuff out at you. Centrifugal force will always bring the shavings to the big diameter. So when you're cutting down, those shavings are waiting for you right there. This little dry thing, I can push right through those shavings, but if you're turning wet wood, as you cut down and you get here, those great big clump of shavings are waiting to catch the tool. So you got to kind of be ready for that. You know, by the way, I don't make a hollow form out of green wood anymore. I just don't do it. It's what I want to do. I don't know moisture content, but what I want, if it weighed 100 pounds to start out, I want to get it when it's lost about a third to half of its weight. So people ask me that all the time. Do you turn them twice? I'm like, no, they're hard enough to do it once. I don't want to do that. So what I do is I wait for it to be about halfway dry. That way it's not this pine dust like this, but it's a little friendlier to turn, but dry enough to hold its shape. That's kind of important. So I buy wood for next year. I don't buy wood that's wet burl and want to use it right away. I've learned some people have way skinnier fingers than me too. Like my wife will put her finger in there, honey, there's a little ridge. Thanks. Thank you. She's my test case. I come home and she goes, did you tell any stories about me? Yeah, of course. All right. Really I'm almost completely finished with that. I'm just going to touch this and then I'm going to go on to the bottom. I'm pretty sure I'm done with the whole top half right now. Any questions so far? Well, students say they have no questions. I say, you're not paying attention if you don't have questions. I throw a lot of stuff at you. If you don't understand it, just let it go. You know, like I realize some of you don't do hollow forms. You don't need to know some of this. We're just trying to have a good time and kind of watch me maybe break something. I got a little ridge. Yeah, go ahead. It is, yeah, those are my favorites. And they happen to carry it. There's one really odd thing about it. It uses quadruple A batteries, and I have no idea why. Just to make it hard to find. Because I remember taking them out the first time. Oh, wow. Okay. Cause I don't care if this thing's big, but honestly, this is the best light I've ever found. This thing works really, really well. I would say also, if you're not going to turn for a while, take the batteries out. You know. What do you do? What do you do with it? Oh, okay. I thought you meant putting it out on the end of the line. They do that for sharks in Florida. They use those glow sticks out there. So I know they told me that, and then we're going diving. They go, they want to put one on the back of my tank. I go, you kidding me? Like, really? I'm gonna go out in the Gulf Stream with this shark attracted in the back of my tank. Yeah, sure. Now, I actually still have this. This might be a replacement from the first one I got from you probably 12 years ago or something. So yeah, that is where I got it from. I'm not going to fuss with this too much. The thing about making a hollow form through a really small opening for you guys, it's really boring to watch because I have to stop too many times and measure. So it's more fun that I have for me, this is a big opening. I don't know, some people it might not be, but to me, it's a big opening. Yeah, moving from my assistant in the back of the room. Yeah. Do you want to come up here and finish this? She could though. She's doing really well helping me. This is her first time assisting me here. We're having a good time over there. So what I have now, let me come back over here, guys. What I have now is, so what I did is I roughed this thing out, and then these are the way I make my cuts, like this. Until I actually have this thing smooth the way I want it right now. And now that's what I have, I'm done. But each cut I make is going to go like this and pull back toward the center. So I don't just stop and make those steps. If you're making a salad bowl, you can make steps like that and pick it up because you can see it. I don't want to do that. Some people probably break things doing that. But the important thing is I have that extra wood to transition the bottom and the top. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the same thing. You want to finish this for me? Okay. My turning buddies there. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to go back and go to the bottom of the depth hole, and I'm going to set that up the same way as I did the bottom. After that, I'm going to come in and do more of the real shape, and at that stage, I'll take that out of there. I needed to leave that for a while. So right now, I'm going to go in and finish the bottom. This goes really fast. The tough part was what I already did because there wasn't any room. Now I'm looking down below and there's lots of room for the shaving. So I might be able to do this in only like 2 passes. Okay. This is kind of fun doing small ones because when I used to do symposiums, I would do an inch block of wood in 90 minutes. You know, and then people asking questions became an annoyance. Yeah, but also in a symposium, it's really rude to take more than your time because someone else needs to come and set up. And I remember once looking back the clock going, I have 3 minutes. I hadn't rechucked the bottom yet. And I said, guys, I got to shut up. And I did it. I didn't break it. But this thing's going really fast. So you can come in and find the hole. And that's what I'm going to do and work my way down and then come back. If this wasn't burl, the bottom is just like a salad bowl. The cut should be this direction. If it was end grain, they'd be pull cuts. This is burl, so I can cut it whichever way I want. But I can use that bottom hole to get this cutter in there. And you'll see, I'll work my way down really quick like this. Man, that's loud. Well, one thing about my bigger tools, I designed them to take a carbide swivel tip, but also an M4 powdered metal scraper. There's a lot of talk about, scraping versus cutting. On the inside of the hollow form, I could care less. But what I usually do, these are too small to use a scraper. So actually my bigger tools are easier to use because scrapers are very forgiving. So my tools have that angle coming down. When you hold a scraper at that angle, you can almost can't do anything wrong with it. But what I do is I take most of the wood out with the carbide, and then I finish getting the thin wall thing with the scraper because it's easier and slower, and I'm way less likely to break it. With these little tools, I don't have that. So at the end, I'm using that shear cut because there's no way that little screw is going to hold a scraper. But I love having the scraper option in the bigger tool. So this is completely full of shavings right now. And I think I'm pretty well down to the bottom of that depth hole. Let me check it out. I got about 1/4 of an inch to go. Let me just take a quick measurement. Yeah, I'm almost again caught up to what I told you I was going to do. And by the way, if you haven't done any of these, go way slower than what I'm doing right now. Way slower. I'm actually right at the bottom of that depth hole. I stop. Once you get there, I have a nub to deal with. So I'll stop at the bottom and then I'll take the outside. Then I can evaluate whether I need to go a little deeper. But I'm not going to put the drill back in there. I don't drill twice. That would be kind of dangerous. I don't do that. I do enough dangerous stuff. Okay. Okay, so I'm completely finished right to here, and I still have a little bit there. But my plan was to have a little extra wood there so that I can finish that shape. But I still have just a little tiny bit more to go. Almost finished. This is going back to that slight bent tool, which you guys don't carry because I designed them during COVID and nobody knew. But I like this. It's milled on the side, so I can get in there with it down there, and it's really friendly to use. Yeah, by the way, I've always used, I've let Daryl and Craig be the only retailer of my tools. We've known each other a long time. I won't let anybody else sell them. I'm not in the tool business. I don't really care. I don't like to sell them myself either. I'd rather you guys deal with the tax and the shipping. I don't want to do it. A little bit more. So if you understand what I'm saying, I want to leave a little bit down there because I know I want to kind of change that bottom curve a little bit, okay? Really kind of thin there. Yeah, I'm pretty well done with this thing. I don't think I should really do any more down there. So I'm going to show you how I sand the inside a little bit. So I'm going to use these hemostats. What I do is I take some of these rubber cheap floor mats, the one that lock together, and I cut a little piece of rubber and I wrap the sandpaper around it. Okay, you can't, if you leave big ridges, you can't sand it out. That's not going to happen. But you can at least get it smooth where everybody's going to lose their fingers in there. You know, when I'm really making my best work at home, I'll go 320 on the inside. It's different to me than the outside where I can hit the palm sander. So this, I want to actually finish sanding it all the way. And I'm just gonna, for good measure, I'm gonna hit it with 220. Be careful because especially on a natural edge piece, you can break it really easy doing this. You know, I mean, you kind of bark on the edge there, so it's really easy to just hit it. And I do use the tool rest. So I've seen students try to do it. There's no reason not to use the tool rest. All right. At this stage right now, I'm going to come out and I'm going to take that wood off. So this is another reason. This is the reason why, one of the reasons why I like the one-way gouges so much. I have another flute. My gouges too, people used to make fun of me more than they do now, but I have a little point on the end of it. And it starts to cut really quick. I don't like a gouge that actually has a big rounded edge on it. I'll get a catch. And I don't use spindle gouges at all. I'll break anything I touch with it. I'm not a good spindle turner at all. But this gouge for me is really easy to use. But I'll just show you if you can see how quick it makes a cut. I'll just do it here. Once I'm in that very tiny little bit like that hair like that point is in there. And now that thing's just gonna cut. It's not gonna kick back. It just instantly bites. If you can see that, once it has that little thing, it becomes really easy to use. I guess I've kind of become known as the guy with the pointy gouge. So I'm gonna come back up the wall. The wall thickness is important, but it's not as important as the shape. So I'm really trying to work that shape right now, like this. I think I'm pretty close to being finished with this thing. I've done it before. It was a big piece too. It wasn't one like this. So I really want to get the walls fairly, it's a little bit too much wood there, but basically the most important thing is the shape by far. So I'm trying to make that curve come all the way down. So I'll come up here where I know I have a little bit of wood. But all the time I'm just watching the shape. And I've noticed just from seeing videos, I go back and forth between watching the gouge and looking up here. I've just seen it in video where I can watch my eyes go back and forth. So I'm looking at the cut, I'm looking up here, I'm looking back at the cut. I watch kind of both at the same time. This thing's pretty thin right now. I'm close to blowing it up. I'm not kidding. It's really thin. Okay, so I'm not going to do anymore. I'm just kind of just tights it. I'm better off just waiting until I rechuck it. Okay. Now this is a chance to sand it again. I'm just going to touch it with the sander. I have 220 on there. That'll be fine. Hold your breath. There's so many little things I could stop and tell you, but one of the tricks with going through small openings is I'm telling the students, you might bump that rim. So usually I leave a little bit of extra wood right there, and now I could take it off. Because if you leave it really thin and then you mash up that rim, you can't fix it. And this is the time I would actually take that off. I didn't need it, but I left it. This thing is probably too thick all the way. It's really thin. I did not plan that. It just happened. Now, there's lots of different ways to rechuck. When I used to do symposiums a lot, I would take those. There's another reason those deep jaws are good. I could take a piece of neoprene and I could actually make a jam chuck right there on the spot by putting it against the jaws. But that's not as easy as the way I'm going to show you. These vacuum chuck drums, I don't even know what this is. This is something fancy. I use the one-way vacuum chuck drums. I can't push here on my pieces, but I can push out there. And this doesn't really fit that well, but if I get one that pushes here, I can put the pressure up against it. But I can't push here in the middle. So I'm just going to go ahead and use this to do the rechucking. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you that measurement now. This is the only measurement that I actually care about. It's the only one that I measure. And there's another jaws open. This is another thing I can do here too, like this. And I got that measurement while it's still on there. So I'm going to look at it and go, okay, it's 33. And I'll come up to my students when they have it jam chucked and they're working on it, go, what's the measurement? The correct answer is not, I don't know. You know, that this is a measurement from the inside to where the tailstock's going to be. Okay, and that is really key. So what did I just say it was? 33? Thank you. I don't know. All right. Well, here's where I am now. Yeah, I have a little bit of extra wood down there because I know I still have to blend it in. Okay. I guess Mike Nish was saying these are some made in England kind of fancy high-priced version. Now, sometimes if I'm home, I actually will turn the vacuum on. Obviously, I'm not going to do it now, but I'm just using it as a jam chuck. But often I have holes in pieces. I can't use the vacuum, but I can put a piece of tape over it sometimes. You know, I'll tell you one more. I have lots of stories. I was doing a symposium and I was in the craft booth and I see the one-way booth and my friends over there are pointing at me and sending this guy over to me. I go, what are they doing? So he came over and tried to convince me that my Buckeye Burl pieces that we could look through and have a conversation could be vacuum chucked. Okay. And he's explaining to me that if you used a big enough engine, like a Chevy engine, it'll work. You know what I said? I said, that's my friend Stuart Batty over there. Go tell him. Stuart still doesn't know I sent the guy over to him. There's somebody that's going to argue with me. I've learned about absolutely everything that I do, and I've kind of become numb to it. I don't really want to hear it. Okay, so what was really important to me too, see, I've got the tailstock mark. It's a dot with the circle around it from the cup center. There's so many things I'm going to throw out. I never use that wedge looking thing in the bottom of that to do it. I see people online doing that all the time. At this stage, this is thin enough. That's a splitting wedge. So this is what I want, but that's going to line it for me right there. Once I get that back in, it's really important to have it. So I talked for 1 second about faceplates. I rarely use a faceplate because when you turn between centers and you put a faceplate on, when you put the first 2 screws in, that thing moves a little bit, unless you're really spending a lot of time with it. Now that mark's not accurate. And if you do thin things like me and this isn't accurate, you'll never be able to do this. So what I actually do on the occasions when I do a faceplate is take the nub all the way off, and there's a center finder. You can tap it like that. But this is my preferred thing by far right here. Okay, and if you have a big, strong tenon, there's no problem doing hollow forms with chucks. There's a few people running around out there saying that's not true, and that's, to me, that's just wrong. You know, it's very efficient. Chucks are very efficient. So we'll get in like this. I can't see without these. Okay, so that goes in first. And if this thing is still round, sometimes this happens the first time, where if you can get it to touch everywhere at the same place. And sometimes I have to mess with it. So what I'll do is look for the high spot and just touch it a little bit. You want to come up here and do this one? See, we're going through this next door in the class with people for the first time. Now, I'm not going to be cutting anything up here. I'm only cutting this. So this is the spot where I really, and I can't crush it. This thing's so thin, I could crush this right now. So I need to just kind of stop and make sure that I have it in there good, okay? First step is take the tenon off. I don't need to measure it yet. I'm just going to take the tenon off really quick and get it out of the way. Small bow gouge for this. There's some things I don't want to, I can do with a big bow gouge. There's way more that can go wrong. There's all kinds of edges you can catch here. So I'm going to do it with this. Now I'm going to turn this up again and do as I say, not as I do, okay? Kind of fun being aggressive again. I get to be aggressive for a minute.
Good night.
Yes, you forgot.
Now, the first step for me, I haven't even measured yet, is
What?
continue the shape down to here. Then I'll figure out where the base
Leave.
is. So I'm gonna explain it to you.
Leave.
I'm not just gonna say the base has to be here because that's what it's telling me, because that might be too big. So a lot of things are happening right now. I'm gonna determine the size of the base, how much room is in the base. But the most important thing is I'm finishing the shape. And so I want to continue the curve down, then I'll come up and figure where the base is. So I'm going to come down like this and continue my shape like this. Okay, I'm going to make a base, but I know it's not in this spot. Undercut. Okay. Now I'll measure it, and I know that's not where it's going to be, but I have a base now. If something went wrong, I at least have a base. 33, right? Yes, the base is actually way up here. But if I went up and said the base needs to be there, it'd be way too big. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that down and start taking some of that wood out while I'm maintaining the shape at the same time. That's the most important thing. So I'll come back up here like this. Come back here and measure it again. But each time I stop, I want to make sure the shape is the way I want because it's more important. So I'll tell students, it's probably better, but it's the shape you want. And if you just say, okay, my base needs to be here. The reason I make a big base is if small base continues to shape down to the table, it stops the shape. So I want it. These are no function. It's not a salad bowl. So as long as I make a base and make it really good and undercut it a little bit, it doesn't need to be good. Here's another thing. I have so many rules I could make fun of. There's no relationship whatsoever between the size of the opening and the size of the base. There's no formula for it. Big pieces need to get the in, and they need to stand up, but there's no formula. It's whatever I feel like. If I feel like going through a really small hole, that doesn't mean the base has to be that small. They're two completely different decisions. I'm about to make the base decision. There's one thing I think is funny too. I've heard this said a lot. Sorry if people believe this, but with hollowing tools, I've heard, you've probably all heard this. The length of your handle should be 5 times whatever you're reaching over the tool rest. A broken clock is right twice a day. 3 or 4 inches, that might work. I've been 15 inches off a tool rest by hand. That means 75-inch handle. I would hit him in the head with it. There's no reason. I have a handle that comes to my elbow because nothing else matters after that. And I use the same handle for every single hollowing tool I use because it fits me. And there's no reason to have any bigger handle. The other thing is I use this one, the little one, for just this gouge, but I didn't use it, if you notice, for these little tools, because having a small handle means I have to hold it too hard with my hands, and I can't do this thing when I tuck it into my body. Remember I was saying before, I use these fingers without this. This is where your strength comes in your hand. Your strength comes from these three fingers, not this. That's what I just know from all the martial arts. That's where you get the strength from. So you'll see me grip a handle, it's like this. I'm holding it with my body, my elbow tucked in, and that's how I kind of do everything, is like this. But the handle thing is crazy. Don't let someone else tell you what to use. And that's it. It's like a hammer. You know, if you have small nails, you know, small diameter hammer, the head is different, but the handle is whatever fits in your hand. The are a little bigger than this. The black and white one, if you really have big paws, your handle should be a little bigger. Here's another little thing too. If the handle is whatever you grab it is so small that your hand closes around it, you can't squeeze it any tighter. You're just pushing your fingers into the back of your hand. So I want a little bit of space. And that little 1/4 inch of space there means that I'm not working that hard. It's holding in there. You know, if you're doing pull-ups and the bar was this, you couldn't hold on to it. If it was really skinny, it would dig into your hand. So the bottom is, and that's the one you should use, even if I don't really like it. Also, people say they have a hollowing handle. That's not good. That weight is a counterbalance to it, but I'm leaning on it too. So I don't want one of those really, really lightweight handles. So I use Michael Hoslick's steel handle and the aluminum steel handles. I have the aluminum ones I use, but they're for travel. I'd really rather have the steel handle. So I'm just kind of covering some of what I consider the myths of hollowing. I've been doing it too long to agree with some of that. All right, so I still have a little bit too much wood in the bottom, so I'm going to make one more pass at this and then call it good. So I'm coming back up again a little bit. I'm trying to be careful now. I'm not being rough anymore because I'm pretty well done. Okay, now that base is too big. I don't like it, so this is going to probably be my last cut. Okay. This is my last chance before I turn that any smaller. My last chance to hit it with the power sander. Now there's one real subtle thing I did. I came around and I made the base, I softened that edge and I made it a little bit smaller with the sander. So I allowed for that. You know, the base was a little bit, but by coming up here like this. So that's kind of my final base right there. So now this just depends on how brave you want to get. And this is another thing the little gouge does really well. It really reaches in there really good. Now, one thing about what I'm doing, this is braille. I don't know how much strength is in this, though. I can't go as if I knew where the wood was. I have to be a little bit careful. I did a demo at a symposium once, and I took the tailstock away, and that dropped on the floor, and everybody clapped. Oh, no, I only broke it. That was not intentional. But I want to clean it up really good and make sure the place where it's going to sit on the table is nice and clean and smooth. So that's going to be my very last little thing I do. You can deal with that nub. I use a carbide burr and a little sanding. But the last thing I do before I take them off the lathe is just do this and make sure I don't have to mess with the place that's sitting on the table. Okay. I can't believe I didn't break it. But Well, let me talk to you about that. If you're looking at a shape and you think you need to take one cut, thinking about it, okay? Because the shape is everything. If you're looking at this thing saying, you know what, I think I need to change this, you do. I know we all laugh about that last cut, but that's more of a joke on the inside than the outside when you're going to break it. But anyway, that's a little box elder hollow form. Okay, I did it pretty fast. Thanks, guys. It doesn't, when you see it, it doesn't weigh anything. It really doesn't really weigh much. Anyway, I just try to rush through all the steps. You know, I did a thing at the symposium in AW years ago. It was about demoing and teaching. And the first thing I said, Kip was in there with me too. I said, they're two completely different things. You know, demonstrating is like to me like doing a concert, getting my energy up, laughing, having a good time with people, and showing what I do. I can't teach. I can't teach you how to do this. You got to come and do a hands-on class because you only learn this by making mistakes. You know, the engineers always think if they plan it carefully, they can make the first one perfect. And I'm like, I'm 7,000 into this and I'm perfect. So you learn mistake in the class. I'll say, okay, I know you did this. Don't do it on the next one. So what usually do the classes here, and the wood is just perfect. Brandon, who works in here, cuts my wood up better than I do. And that's a big thing about me coming in. I love teaching at Craft Supplies. It's by far the best place. It's the only place you don't have to clean up after yourself too. But he cuts the wood perfectly too. And it's you know, it's kind of a thing from practice. If you're scared to make a mistake, you're never going to get good at this. You know, I tell you one last thing. I used to have a hole in my basement that happened to match my fist exactly. Okay, and somebody asked me, because I used to have fits when I broke stuff. How'd you know there's no 2x4 in there? I said, it didn't matter. At that moment, I spent 6 hours on it. I didn't care if the 2x4 was there. I've been through a lot of stuff in the last 15 years health-wise, and breaking the hollow form is like the least thing that I have to worry about. Yeah. Yeah, okay, good question. Don't break it off. Right? I take a pull cut saw and I don't try to cut it flush because you'll hit the edge. I cut it off and then I take a little next door and I want the quarter-inch tool and I take it. And the last thing I do is I take a little piece of sandpaper with my thumb and I go like this. But I sand it on the lathe, the part that sits on the table. I don't mess with that by hand. You'll never get it to sit straight. And I told you, I don't do hollow forms, but in the class we do, so I'll throw it at you. If you turn something and then you go and tries and it's not sitting flat, my trick is to take a 220 piece of sandpaper, tape it to the bed of the lathe, hold it down and turn it a couple times to get it so it sits flat again. I do not turn hollow forms out of wet wood anymore. It's a waste of my time. It's going to move. I work too hard on the shape. Like I told you, if you're patient enough to let that wood dry out a little bit. It's another thing. Brandon buys the wood from my class so early that it gets to be pretty dry. So it's pretty good. He's buying the burl from my class in March now. So that's kind of what I do. I buy wood a year ahead of time. So the wood in the class is perfect, really. And on Thursdays, we have burl day and everybody gets a piece of maple burl. And I don't give it to you till Thursday afternoon because I want you to practice more. So that gives everybody that one really nice finished piece to take home. Maple burl is the thing I've turned more than all other woods put together, maybe, because I used to have a really good source. I'm so old now that I used to pay $1 a pound for maple burl, and it's 5 or 6 times that. But I also used to write $10,000 checks for burl. The thing is now, I don't own any wood in my shop that has any moisture in it at all. I've had it so long, it's all completely dry. I'm on Instagram. If you look at it close, it's all worm eaten and it's kind of interesting, but I'm working in a cloud of dust now. Like that right there was really putting a lot of dust back in my face. So be careful of your lungs. Like I told you, those Moldex N100 masks are really a big step up from the N95 masks. If you got, I don't like wearing a helmet and all that kind of stuff. I'm just a little claustrophobic and I just don't like it. I'm the kind of person they had to force me to wear a helmet on a motorcycle at one point because I didn't want to. I used to live in Virginia and I drive across from DC where I went to school. In the middle of Key Bridge, I take my helmet off because I don't have to have it over there. And I realize how stupid that is now. That's 19-year-old stupidity. By the way, I have a really cool electric motorcycle that goes 0 to 60 in 2.2 seconds. And I'm 71 years old. I'm just trying to be careful. Yeah, question. No, but state is what he's asking me about. So I really don't know about stuff like that. I like Pearl. Madrone than any imaginable. If you cut fresh madrone burl and leave it in the sun for 10 minutes, it's cracked. So what they do is they boil it. I think that's stabilizing it. The formula is like 1 hour per inch, and then they sell it for double. But so, yeah, but what I found out is what I can do. See, if you turn it on format of wet wood, you gotta be really fast. Because the thing, and that's also drying it out at supersonic speed. So it's gonna start moving. What I discovered about I could turn a hollow form down to 1/8 of an inch and then drop it in for about 20, 30 minutes and it's stabilized. Madrone's a weird thing. It's almost like plastic. If you put a piece of madrone, a thin piece of madrone in the boiling water, you can bend it, then put cold water on it, it'll hold the bend. It's like a piece of plastic. I once did a nested set that was oval, and I don't own that oval thing. I just had the really thin piece of madrone and I pushed it and then went over and filled it up with cold water. See, people don't know though, if you put hot water back in, it'll go back to round again. But anyway, that's the closest I get to stabilized wood is boiled madrone. And actually, the biggest hollow form there, I didn't bring anything big, but the biggest one out there is madrone. And that one was in the bag for 10 years or something. So it's that one hollow form there. That actually did, we have the design thing in San Diego, that actually took first place there. Just recently, the darker colored piece, that big one. Did you have something, Ewan?
Raffle ticket for that demo piece. Could you tidy up the base the next couple of days and then we'll have next meeting for the guy that wins it? Demo.
I might make you a different one because that thing's kind of thin there. So I might make a different one, but I'd be happy to give you one to do that with. You don't know how thin it is. I almost stretched it when I put it between centers. No, but I will give it to you raffle. I say maybe I do in the other or something.
And also,
but that thing has about a 1 millimeter wall in a couple of places, and I didn't say anything. I just sweated a little bit. I have that record of having never broken anything in front of people. You have no idea how close I just came.